What's up, guys? It's TechnoViking23 coming to you today with some Destiny 2, and we're actually going to be talking about something that seems to be going on in the Destiny 2 community right now that I thought would make for some interesting conversation. Now, one of the cool things that Bungie said they were going to do with the Final Shape expansion was they were going to have these new double exotic class items for each class, where it's basically going to have the ability of multiple exotic armor pieces. You're going to get them on one class item that you can wear, and they kind of did that to go along with the new prismatic subclass that they released in the Final Shape. It was a big part of the marketing and the advertising for Final Shape before it came out. But when the mission was actually revealed this past week at Reset, it took people a while to figure it out. A couple of streamers I was watching actually found it. Having to kill the secret boss after you go through and kill some bosses in the Overthrow event. There's like a secret boss that pops up in each area. You have to go through and kill all those in order to open up the mission. And then you can play the mission, which it looks like a pretty cool mission. It's actually narrated by Savathun. There's some pretty cool lore things that go on in that mission. But what they did not tell anybody before they launched this mission was that it was going to be a two-person mission, and it has no matchmaking. So if you are a solo player or a more casual player in Destiny, you may have trouble getting it finished. You might have to use the LFG, the Fireteam Finder in game. But a lot of people aren't comfortable doing that, and of course the community is in uproar a little bit about that, and we've got pretty much two sides forming, as we usually do with the Destiny community, where a lot of the casual and solo players are very upset. If you go to the Bungie forums, it's like literally the first 2-3 pages of the forums are complaints about Bungie screwing over solo players because they didn't tell them that you're going to have a friend that plays the game, or you're going to have to use LFG, which a lot of people don't like doing for various reasons. We'll talk about that in a minute. And of course, on the other side, you've got a lot of the more elite endgame Destiny players, the ones that raid all the time, do the Grandmaster Nightfalls and dungeons and things like that. Most of the streamers and the content creators, of course, they are firmly on the side of it's great content, and the solo players just need to shut up and deal with it, that you're not going to be able to do everything in the game. I even saw a couple posts where people were like, if you're a solo player, this game's not for you. You should go play something else, which I kind of took a little offense to that because I've been playing this game since the beta of Destiny 1, and the last mostly 6-7 years I have been a turbo casual solo player for the most part. I've still been able to do a lot of things. I've soloed most of the exotic weapon missions that have come out, some of the dungeons and things. So I get done what I can get done in the game, but I kind of understand where both sides are coming from, and that's what I wanted to talk about in this video. Was unfortunately it's kind of come down to a us versus them thing. It's like we got to root for our side. It's similar to how politics and everything else in the world is going these days, is we can't have a nuanced conversation about anything. And I actually thought that this mission being released in the fashion that it was, and with Bungie saying they're actually going to be making a 12-person Grandmaster version of the Excision mission, that's going to be coming out, I think, pretty soon, and that's not going to have matchmaking either. So you're going to have to find 11 other people to play that in Fireteam Finder, or looking for groups. So it seems Bungie may be heading in a direction where they're going to be putting more content like that in for the higher level players that's not match made, so that the solo and casual community can't really participate in it unless they use the Fireteam Finder. But instead of having this big argument, I thought this would be a chance for both sides to kind of come together and talk about it. But unfortunately, as I said, everybody's just screaming at each other and arguing. Even I saw Glad was actually the one that made the post where he said if you're a solo player, Destiny's not the game for you, which I felt that was a little overreaction from him. I'm kind of sad that he would say something like that, being such a good player in the community, but it's unfortunate he has that take on it, because I kind of see both sides of this. And I think one of the problems with Destiny in general is, especially from the perspective of a lot of the streamers and the more elite players, I'll take Datto for instance. He's someone I actually do watch quite a bit. Is he kind of comes from a background of growing up with like World of Warcraft and back in the golden age of MMOs, which is like the same time I kind of grew up with PC games, and he kind of shares a lot of the sentiments that the WoW community had back in the day, where there needs to be a good amount of content in the game that the high-end level players can do, which will allow them to have accomplishments and items and gear and loot that they can show off that no one else can really get. And I kind of understand that you do need to have that thing to chase, if you're a higher level player. But I don't think that it should come at the expense of the solo or the casual player in the game. And obviously, in most of these games, what a lot of people forget is that the casual audience makes up the biggest bulk of the player base. And so if you stop giving them things to do or you upset them enough, your game is basically going to die. And Destiny's had that problem in the past when Bungie's tried to cater to the streamers and the higher end players, where a lot of the casual players just quit the game. This happened right after Lightfall. Their player numbers dropped through the floor, and they were kind of like, "Oh no, what do? Nobody's playing the game anymore. This is really, really bad." And so that's something they have to kind of watch out for. But I think this kind of exposes the bigger problem with Destiny, is that so many people think this game is actually an MMO when it's really not. And as someone who grew up playing MMOs way back in the early 2000s, back when you had to pay a subscription fee, there wasn't any of this free-to-play stuff going on, and I think overall that made a lot of the MMO communities a lot better than what we get today with the free-to-play audience that can come in and just do whatever they want, be toxic and things. But is those games back then, like, there was so much content to play, it wasn't even funny. And it's like, even today, I don't really play MMOs very hardcore anymore. I played WoW pretty hardcore. City of Heroes for over 8 years was my big no-life game. And now I play Final Fantasy XIV because I don't have a lot of time to play games anymore. That game is a little bit more casual-friendly, but there's still a ton of stuff to do in the game. I could spend hundreds of hours in Final Fantasy XIV and not even play like a tenth of the content that's available to me. There's a ton of content for high-end players. There's a ton of content for the more casual players, and there's rewards and loot and things that you can get in different areas of the game that makes everybody happy. And that's really what one of Destiny 2's biggest problems is right now, is you have such a very small fixed loot pool. You don't have a lot of content to play. I mean, every season is basically the same. They launch a seasonal activity. You grind it for a week or two, and you're pretty much done, unless you want to just keep banging your head against the wall for the next 2 or 3 months. The raids come out, they're pretty good, but usually after a week where they first come out, and it takes everybody a while to beat it, guides come out, it takes 2 to 3 hours after that, and they're really not that special anymore. It's like, I was talking to a friend of mine, and I said, here's the thing, we watched all these guys stream the raid this past weekend. Some of these teams, they took 30, 40 hours to get through it, and they all got the raid exotic, which of course that's the big thing you want when you play the raid, is you want to get the raid exotic. Back in Destiny is like, you wanted the Vex Mythic class, that was the big thing everybody was going for. But the thing is, like, so yeah, all these cool day one streamers, they went and did the raid on contest mode. It's awesome, it's a great accomplishment. But now, any Joe Schmo Guardian can just go in, watch a guide, he can go into LFG and play the game, and in 3 or 4 hours he's going to get that exact same exotic. So it's not really special to anyone, and there's really nothing special in the game right now that only a certain subset of players can get, until they brought in this dual Destiny mission, and now all of these elite players can get this new item, this exotic class item, where there's going to be a big portion of the player base that is not able to get it, or just doesn't want to deal with the things they have to do in order to get it. So that's going to be their, the elites finally have that thing that they can hang on to, and they're defending it vigorously because of that. So that's why I think, the problem stems from the discussion we should be having, is how can Bungie turn this into a thing where, hey, we've got a good set of content for these elite high-end players to play. Because on one hand, I do agree with the elite players. There needs to be that harder content. There has to be that content in the game that's going to challenge them, that's going to give them something special to chase, that's going to give them something that they can show off. Because that feels pretty good, and it makes you feel good to play the game. But then on the other end, there's also got to be that content for the more casual player to be able to participate in, similar to some of the exotic missions where you can go in and even if you're not super good, I don't consider myself to be really great at the game, but even I can solo, Seraph's Shield, I was able to solo that, and I was able to solo the Whisper mission, I was able to solo the Outbreak mission. So I think that should be something that's there for everybody, but they've really got to figure out how they can make the loot in the game feel special. They've got to figure out how they can bring in enough content to keep everyone happy, because that's something the game has always suffered from. And a lot of these streamers don't ever seem to understand that, hey, this is not an MMO. And if you play the game 8 to 10 hours a day, there's not going to be anything to do in the game at all, because there's just not that content. Back in the day, we played World of Warcraft. You again, like I said with Final Fantasy XIV, you could play the game for hundreds of hours and not even do like half of the content that was in the game. There was so much to do. Whether you wanted to go fishing, whether you wanted to craft, maybe you wanted to go catch special pets. If you were on the hunter class, you wanted to go get a special pet that you could show off to everybody, and that was something cool you could do. Destiny just doesn't have that section of content that's available, which I think would keep a lot of people happy. So unfortunately, we're not going to have the chance to have that discussion because everyone has kind of drawn the line in the sand now, and it's the elites versus the casuals and the solo players. And the elites are over here saying, you casuals, just shut up and let us have our thing. It's great, and you guys should just not even play the game. If it's that hard for you, go make friends, go to LFG, And I don't know. I don't like that attitude either. It's very, condescending, very elitist, and, instead of talking about how we can just improve the game overall to make more people happy, we're going to get in another big fight. Myself personally, I honestly don't really care that much as a solo player because I just don't have the time to really worry about it. I get to play the game maybe 2-3 hours a night at the most. And so when I get on and play, I just want to go play and do the stuff that I enjoy to do. And part of that is I don't enjoy trying to get on Fireteam Finder to find a team to run anything. And it's not really because people are toxic. It's more so because people tend to give up very easily. The LFG experience I have had with Destiny is basically you go in, you take like 10-15 minutes to get a team, maybe a little bit longer, that's going to run the activity you want to do, and you have to get through all the elite posts where it's like, oh, you must have done this a million times before, you must be flawless, you must have these exact exotic items, you must be using this exact build. Once you can finally wade through all that crap and get to a team that actually is going to run it, you'll get in, you might fail the first encounter on something, and then somebody gets mad and quits because they're like, oh, if we're going to have to teach or we're going to have to fail encounters before we get through this, we're not going to do it. And that's been my experience big time with LFG is like, especially like if you're trying to raid, it's like you'll fail the first encounter one time, somebody messed up a mechanic, and then like half the people leave, and then you got to go back and find more people. And by the time you actually get through the whole raid, if you do, or even a couple encounters, you can look at the report and there's like 15 people that have tried to take part in it. And I have very limited time to play the game. So when I get on, I don't want to deal with it. That's not something I really, want to go in and use. I just want to go in and play and do what I'm going to do. If I want to play the seasonal activity or if I'm going to go try to solo something, that's what I want to do. And the other thing too with these class items, they are butt ugly. They just look terrible on all of the classes from what I've seen so far. And that's another thing with Bungie is like their armor design with Destiny 2 has been really bad outside of the stuff that they're going to sell in the Eververse store, of course, because they want to make some money. So it will not shock me at all if they do bring out some exotic ornaments for these class items that make them look good and they put them in the Eververse store. But yeah, so just in general, like as a solo player, I just don't really care about them. I'm not going to get involved in all the uproar, even though I do see both sides of this argument. My thing is, I would tell a lot of the solo players who are upset is like, if you really enjoy the game, it's probably not that big of a deal that you can't get this necessarily if you don't want to go mess with LFG, if you don't want to try to get somebody to carry you through it. Like, it's not that big of a deal. You've probably got your other exotics and stuff that you like to use, and it's really no big deal. So I don't think it's worth getting super upset about on either side of the argument, and that's, like I said, why I kind of wanted to make this video just to discuss what the topic is that we should be talking about, which is we need more content in the game that's going to allow people to do what they want to do and show off the things that they want to show off. So that's the big takeaway I got from this past week, just reading all of the responses and everything. And it sucks a lot of the streamers are having such a negative reaction, telling people, the game's not for them, and you just shut up and keep your mouth shut and go, if you can't solo it, too bad, that kind of attitude. I just don't like it on either side, really. It sucks when the community's kind of at each other's throats, but we'll see where they go from this. Bungie did not address any of this in the weekly update, despite it being all over their forums, like for the first 2 or 3 pages. They didn't say anything, but that's pretty typical Bungie. Anytime there's a lot of criticism, they usually just ignore it. They're kind of basking in this glow of the final shape. I saw today a bunch of 10 out of 10s, 9 out of 10s, and I know I gave the final shape a pretty good review when I did my video on it the other day, but I don't think it's that good. 10 out of 10 is a perfect game. I don't think it's game of the year like everybody's talking about. I think part of the thing is Lightfall was just so bad, everybody is kind of just so happy to have a good expansion now. They're kind of overrating it a little bit. I'd give it more along a 7 or an 8 out of 10 than I would a 9 or a 10, but there were still some problems with the campaign. It just felt really weak in terms of gameplay, but narrative cutscenes were awesome. The last boss fight was pretty cool. Raid was good. And everything going on in the Pale Heart afterwards is pretty cool. There's a lot of fun activities you can do. But some of them do get a little tedious. That Kvastov mission, that was a little rough at times, and I think whoever designed that moth-filled cavern must have been having a really bad day and wanted everybody else to experience their misery for a little bit. But, it was very interesting. But, yeah, I think it's still overall a good expansion. And like I said, I'm having a lot of fun with the game, even as a solo player. It's been pretty good. There's plenty of stuff for me to do with my limited time to play each day. So that's kind of there. But again, I think instead of having this big argument right now, it should be time for discussion on how they can improve the overall amount of content that we have in the game instead of constantly under-delivering on the amount of activities there are to do outside of a handful of things every season. So anyways, guys, let me know what you think down below in the comments, whatever side you might fall on. It's always good to have a little discussion about it. As always, thank you guys for watching. Hope you guys are having a great day, and I will see you again next time.